So when people are struggling with intense episodes of anxiety disorders, OCD, depression, any difficulty really, what I often talk about with clients is good old behavioral activation, from CBT. So the idea of choosing what actions you're going to do, scheduling, mapping out the day, bringing in the ACT idea of, trying to make it values based, trying to make it meaningful pursuits that really do reflect what you want to do. And if you're unsure about that, going into the past and thinking about what you used to do, or imagining, a world where these symptoms are water off a duck's back, what would I be doing, with if I freed up that attention and that focus? So the sort of magic wand question has been talked about in therapy for a long time. If this wasn't a problem, what would I be doing? What would non-anxiety, OCD, depression version of me be doing? And mapping that out, and then using our skills that I talk about a lot on this channel to work with that difficulty that comes up as we do it. We're not going to be as engaged. We might struggle to even focus. We might have a lot of difficult thoughts showing up. We might be feeling immense pain, lack of energy, motivation. It might be physically difficult. At the same time, we just relentlessly, gently, and relentlessly continue to apply the skills and follow that plan, follow the values-based plan rather than your mood. And this is a great formula for anyone to do when they're in a difficult spot, is grab your notepad, plan out the day, and just relentlessly practice dropping anchor and refocusing, or diffusing and refocusing. And if it's really intense, just allowing it to be there and engaging. And you only need to apply the skills as you get caught up in the difficulty and distress. So as I'm following through on that plan, if I'm engaged in it, brilliant, just continue to do that. Perhaps refocus if you feel your mind drifting away. But if I'm getting intense thoughts, I'm starting to do mental compulsions, I'm starting to threat monitor and check my feelings and struggle with them and tense against them. Okay, then we run through our skills and refocus. Um, so I wanted to go a bit deeper on this because sometimes people will say, well, is that distraction? Is that avoidance? And the answer is no. The distraction, as many people in the OCD world would say, is focusing on the compulsions and the OCD and getting caught up with all of that. This is a function of engaging in values-based behavior, which is a fancy way of saying things we value, things that matter to us, what the version of us that wasn't struggling would be doing. And the anything can have the function of compulsion. So we can go to therapy with the function of reassurance. We can read study material with the function of controlling symptoms. We can do any technique from CBT, mindfulness-based approaches. Anything out there can be done with that function of trying to answer the uncertainty, control difficult thoughts and feelings, prevent threat. And instead, we're trying to do this with the function of expansion, opening up, going towards what I want my life to be about, this precious moment. So, yes, we can do exposure when we're turning towards the difficulty more and we're learning to not get all tangled up with it and monitor it, resent it, judge it, do mental compulsions, ruminate, analyze, all that sort of stuff about what's going on, and learn to be with that difficulty and distress and move through that. But often, and especially in a crisis, actually it's better to be more engaged in life and to keep moving, keep doing the things that matter, using your skills, because it can just be too intense in those moments to turn towards the difficulty, and we might end up just doing more mental compulsions and getting more caught up with monitoring and resenting, and even doing exposure with the function of trying to get certainty and check feelings and experiences and get reassurance, um, or to get rid of symptoms by doing lots of exposure work, which again feeds back to our brain that this is a problem, that we need to do something to control and figure out and avoid. So yeah, so it's not distraction. Metaphors are often helpful. So it's like we're on the pavement and the difficult thoughts and feelings of the cars on the road. And when we're caught up with it, we're getting into the road, we're flagging things down, we're trying to ignore the road, push it away. And what we want to do instead is be able to acknowledge the cars, but focus on what we're doing on the pavement. And when we're really skillful, we're not even paying any attention. It's only when the cars grab us that we acknowledge them, and then we get engaged back. So it's not distraction. Distraction would be, I'm not going to hear the cars. I'm not going to hear the cars. I'm not going to hear the cars. And of course, we're only going to hear the cars and notice them more and more, and notice the impact it's having on our experience on the pavement. Clouds in the sky, leaves on a stream. There's lots of um, analogies and metaphors out there. So sometimes that's a helpful way to get a sense of this. Um, I wanted to add to this as well, the engagement. Sometimes when you read therapy approaches, especially ones that are influenced by mindfulness, it sounds like we always have to be mindful in this engagement. So we're dropping the mental compulsions and we're going into a mindful state in the sense of being non-judgmentally in contact with our moment-to-moment experience. And yes, that's a good thing, but sometimes we actually want to be thinking and we want to be using thought that's actually helpful. So task-focused thinking that supports whatever we're doing. The example would be, if I was playing a chess game, it wouldn't be helpful to be in a pure mindful mode, because I can't anticipate, think moves ahead. I can't, plan strategy. I can't reflect on errors and how to correct them. I'm going to be just aware of this sensory experience and movement and the thoughts and everything going through my mind. So it's actually not going to be as helpful as being more task focused with your thinking brain there. And there are many things in life where that's the case. Problem solving. Yes, sometimes you can intuitively problem solve and your intuition will provide good um, solutions that you don't need to analyze. But most of the time, most high performing people are doing cost benefit analysis. They're analyzing different options and thinking deeply and productively, and then putting it down, and maybe then letting their mind wander and be in a more creative space. And that combination between focusing on a problem and then incubating is the thing that psychology shows produces the best solutions. So I just want to say that the engage in my world is much broader than just engaging in, say your senses in the moment and any of the kind of grounding techniques with your senses. You're actually just engaging in whatever you're doing in a values-based way. So it might be, back to our plan in the beginning, looking at your notepad, what's on your list of tasks next, and doing it, listening to music and singing and having fun with that, or doing house chores and tasks, or talking to someone and actually being in a pure mindful state. Yeah, you can often follow what people are saying, but you're not often making links and seeing, what's below what the person's saying. That all takes a lot of thinking and theory of mind and empathy, all take our thinking brain as well as our feelings and our attention. So we're really in engage, we're using our awareness and our thinking, our attention and our thinking. Awareness and attention, okay, sometimes they're differentiated, attention being a bit more directed, awareness being more open and receptive. And we want to be able to use all of these things, as we're engaging in things that matter to us. Now, if our mind wandering, if we get out of the anxious thoughts, OCD thoughts, depressive thoughts, and we are able to go into a nice mind wandering place, brilliant. Don't have to do anything with that unless we're trying to achieve a task, we're at work, or we're somewhere where we don't want to be mind wandering. But really, that isn't the case for most people. Even when they get out of the OCD or anxiety or depression, their mind then starts looping on other worries, life worries, or the mind starts doing self-referential thinking is what we know the default mode network does. So the default mode network, the sort of midline structures of the brain when they fire up, they can be very creative and healthy, but often they are more self-referential and worrying about our place in a group. Some people think of it as the social network, really, which is evaluating how are we doing, going over conversations, thinking about, our status and how connected we are. So with that being said, if you move from an anxious place into healthy daydreaming, positive, constructive daydreaming, it's sometimes called, then just enjoy that. Brilliant. Think about pleasant memories, anticipate future things, go off into your fantasy world in a sort of imaginary, playing out fun scenarios and being a character in a movie and whatever it might be. Yeah, if that's all fun, nothing difficult there, then brilliant. We don't need to direct our thinking. But often it is helpful in these episodes to actually be thinking about what you're doing. So with our strategy at the beginning, we might be actually instructing ourselves on what we're doing. So reminding ourselves, okay, got to do this task, then that task. Okay, how's that done? Is that done the way I want it to be? Brilliant. Okay, have to watch out for perfectionism, and that's why videos are tough, because to make something general is hard when everyone's individual, but generally kind of instructing and motivating yourself can be a useful type of self-talk, which is actually shown to improve basketball shooters' efficiency and athletes' motivation and other things like that. Sometimes narrating what you're doing if it's hard to focus. The frontline responders do this when they are sleep deprived and they have to drive, to emergencies. They will actually narrate, looking ahead, checking mirrors, turning left. They'll actually narrate what they're doing to help with attention. So that can help you if you are struggling because of your anxiety and depression. It's hard to focus, then narrate. Compassionate self-talk, kindly and with support and empathy and motivation, talking yourself through, guiding yourself through what you're doing, reminding yourself of skills, reminding yourself of diffusing and letting go of compulsions and refocusing on values, and accepting self-talk, saying, okay, this is a tough feeling, but I can accept it, I can make room for it. So lots of different types of self-talk that are helpful. If we want to make a very simple strategy based on the beginning of this video with people in a difficult place, you might just narrate through what you're doing. If you're struggling to concentrate, you might say some kind, supportive things every so often. You might coach yourself in the skills that you're trying to implement. So those three things, we don't want lots of options. But for other people, savoring self-talk where you go, oh, this is great. I'm loving this. This is brilliant. I love this view. It's beautiful. So it's not non-judgmental. It's positively judging the situation, and upregulating that positive emotion. Um, Gratitude, self-talk, appreciating good stuff, self-celebrating wins, as you ride through these difficult moments, giving yourself a mental pat on the back. There are all lots of ways of talking to yourself that are helpful and support this engage and this task-focused thinking. Now, there might be certain times when you don't want to do any of that. You just want to be in the moment doing what you're doing without that. So we want to have flexibility and move between this. And as I say this, I'm imagining people with OCD where you might be just analyzing everything I'm saying. If that's the case, try to just step outside of all of it, keep it very simple, one foot in front of the other, task after task after task. And if thinking supports what you're doing, use it. If it doesn't, just get your attention in what you're doing. So try to keep it very simple. OCD often robs us of our ability to talk and our common sense. So it makes it very hard to just access like what common sense version of me would be doing. So what we need to try and do is step outside all the compulsions, keep things very simple and what our common sense would have told us in the past, and try to just do that, which is typically make a plan, don't overanalyze the plan, one foot in front of the other, focus on what we're doing, sometimes talk ourselves through things if it helps. So I hope this has been useful and supports your recovery. definitely if you're in a tough place, make a plan for the day, even to every half hour, every 15 minutes even. Use your skills, maybe have some of my practices going in your headphones, or other people you like, their guided practices. Run that in the background to coach you through things, and just keep going, keep going, keep going. And if you get the compulsions down, it will look very different. You'll be in a very different place. And if you get the acceptance up, you'll be in a very different place. And if you train your attention to be focused, even with distress and stuff there, these three things will help a lot. You know, this ability to accept difficult, intrusive thoughts and feelings, let go of compulsions, the ability to focus on what you're doing in the moment. And yeah, as I said, let go of the compulsions, including monitoring how I'm feeling and what's going on. If you get those three things strong, it will all get a lot easier. So yeah, hopefully that was helpful. Engagement can be thinking engagement. It's not just mindful engagement.